this is my life, my body, my pain. Nobody else is going through that pain, right? I am. A woman of color who complains of pain is actually dismissed more easily. I was in so much pain that it broke me.
Hi, welcome to Changing Suits. My name's Bal.
And my name's Taj.
As always, we always have a special guest on the show, and it's always really interesting because, like I always say, I love learning. And this is a topic that I've heard a bit about on the news every so often, and it's endometriosis. So today we've got Dr. Gurpreet Kaur, who is an engagement officer in climate outreach. Now, I know that doesn't sound like it's got anything to do with endometriosis, but everything will be explained to our listeners. So without further ado, hi Gurpreet, how are you today?
Thank you so much, Val. I'm good, and I hope the same for you.
I am. Thank you very much. Can you tell us a bit about why you're here today talking about endometriosis? Because there is obviously a reason. We're not talking about climate, which is obviously your speciality, but we want to talk about endometriosis because you've had a personal experience. Can you talk to us about why?
Absolutely, Val. So I'm an endometriosis survivor. And my journey is quite complicated. And as a woman of color, I feel that the story needs to be out because there could be hundreds and thousands and millions of other girls and women like me who could find themselves in similar situations but have no one to talk to, no one to turn to. And endometriosis is such a it's a women's reproductive health issue, and particularly in our communities, in brown communities, that in itself carries a stigma with it. It's hush hush.
What is endometriosis?
So endometriosis basically is the lining of the uterus grows outside of the uterus. And what that leads to is you will have deposits of that lining on different parts of your pelvic region. It can even go into other, various parts of the body. So particularly around your abdominal lining, on your ovaries. It can be found on your bladder. And what happens is, just in a similar manner, when you get periods every month, the lining is shed and there's an exit point. You get that as periods or menses. The similar thing happens to lining, which actually grows on the other, parts of, the pelvic region, but there's no exit point.
The actual lining is physically, as you're growing up, it's always been there. It's not a case of you've had a period and it's gone to those areas. Is that correct in saying?
Yes, because one of the things is this thing is a mystery. Nobody knows why and why it happens. There are various theories. Some say that as the fetus is developing, when cells are kind of forming, and part of the thing that happens is cells are actually they become embedded on other organs or other parts of the pelvic region. But in women, unfortunately, you will never know until you hit puberty, because that is when you get periods, and that is when the manifestation will happen. Other theories say that this is actually a hereditary thing. So maybe someone in your maternal line actually had it, maybe your mother had it, maybe your grandmother had it, but it was never picked up, and you've had it. So there's actually no consensus on this.
As you come to puberty, is there a difference if someone that has the lining in their pelvic area, obviously there's a problem there? Is there a difference in your periods or how you go through puberty in that case?
The difference is pain, Belle. The difference is pain. And what happens is that because the like I said, it grows on other parts. There's so much inflammation that happens in your pelvic region that the pain is so severe that it defies language. And what happens in cases of women and girls is this pain is actually normalized in not just in our communities but generally. Like we say, oh, it's just period pain, get over it, it's just normal period pain. No, normal period pain is never this debilitating, and it is not normal to be in pain for so much and for so long. And
I know this sounds like a silly question, but I've had very painful periods, and there's certain things that I've done to, it's things like exercise. I feel like that definitely makes a difference for me. But that's not what you're saying. You're saying that because of this problem, that's what's causing the pain. Is
Yes.
that correct? But
Yes.
why is that? Because of the inflammation around your
Yes.
pelvis, then? Right.
Yes, because like I said, that when you have periods,
Mm,
normally there's an exit point for the blood, and
yeah.
that is your menses. But when this lining actually grows on other parts of the body, there's no exit point, and what it causes is more deposits and more inflammation.
If you're in that much excruciating pain, but people are saying, "Oh, don't worry, it's just your period," da da da, and I understand. I've heard that before as well. Does that mean you then don't get treatment for the actual pain, not the actual endometriosis, but the pain even whilst you're on your periods, for example? You don't go to the doctor and say, this is too
Exactly,
much.
Val. So what happens is that the typical period that the time period between, say, a girl starts complaining that she is in immense pain to
Mm.
the point that she is diagnosed with endometriosis is anything between an average of 7 years, but more likely between 9 to 13 years, because it keeps getting dismissed as, oh, this is just normal. It's just period pain. Deal with it. Deal with it.
But why are we dismissing it that easily? And
Exactly.
this is a really interesting question, because I've always said, when a woman gives birth, and I have been educated because we've got a podcast coming out this week actually, in regards to having going through labor and the whole process. We always dismiss, millions of women have gone through it, it doesn't matter, everyone's had a baby, so we shouldn't really complain. And that I always found really fascinating, because it's bloody painful. But again, probably shouldn't have said bloody painful. That's probably not the right words to use. But for periods, it's exactly the same. Oh, millions of girls are going through it. Is that what the issue is? Why we think it's okay that they're going through pain?
Exactly, Well, you've actually hit the nerve center of this whole thing, because what typically I think happens is that, like I said, women's reproductive issues carry so much of stigma around it, right? If you see a woman as, being she's ambitious, she's on task, etc., what are the words that we use for her? Oh, she must be PMSing, she's being a bitch, she's bossy, she's this. You see, it all kind of comes back to these very stereotypical associations. And these associations are actually very, very old. If we look at, say, the Western world, right, we go back to Aristotle. Aristotle actually had a he conceived of life in a series of hierarchies. He called that hierarchy a great chain of being. And in that great chain of being, God and men were right at the top, women and animals were right at the bottom, right? And there you
Right.
have it. And this has actually kind of it's become a near universal trope within every culture, within every kind of like setup. And we look at certain like events, right, in the world history, like let's say Indo-Pak partition. Where is the first war that is fought in these wars? It's on women's bodies, right? Let's rape them, let's impregnate them. This is such a like women's reproductive issue is such a stigmatized, and it carries so much of cultural baggage throughout history, that even women's bodies are dehumanized routinely.
But do you find it interesting that we as women then also hear, because it's usually that conversation perhaps we have with our mums or sisters, but it's those people that are saying to us, it's only a period, don't worry.
Absolutely, because I think there's this buy-in, right? It's what we call patriarchy. There's a sort of like internalization of the older generations within this patriarchy, and perhaps even in a lot of us, when we are, in that system and we become part of the patriarchal system, we are like, stop complaining. It's just a period pain. I, as a woman, have gone through it. Then why are you complaining?
Mm,
Right. And
mm.
that is the shift we need to start making if anything is going to change within women's reproductive health issues. They need to be start taken seriously, otherwise it's always going to be dismissed. It's always going to end up dismissed.
So when you were going through puberty, you obviously had the same thing, you had a lot of pain. Did you what did you do then? Did you just carry on with that 7 years that you've said is the average of before you realize it's endometriosis, or what did you do yourself?
Well, it was a case of, literally like, okay, my periods are painful. There would be days when I would have to, miss school in a month because they were that painful. Over time, it is like you start taking painkillers, and then you start, realizing that over the counter ibuprofen probably doesn't work, paracetamol doesn't work, and that is when things start getting serious. That is the major red flag, that once you know that your pain is, you're not finding any sort of pain relief by normal painkillers that would ideally aid you in that situation, that is already the biggest red flag that something is wrong. You need to get it checked up, and it needs to be diagnosed properly. But a lot of times what happens is that I think, particularly in like our South Asian families, one is people are very hesitant to talk about periods. That is one.
Yeah.
And they are even more hesitant to talk about pain related to periods.
But you say that. I mean, I think that thing, because we always ask, so in the South Asian community, how do we do it? However, we've got the same issue here over in the West as well, though, don't we? Because period poverty has only been spoken about in the last few years. What were we doing for the last, it's actually the whole of society that tends to be too scared to talk about periods,
Periods,
Why are we
exactly.
so scared to talk about periods and anything to
even in the West. Yeah,
blood or pain or anything women's issues? Why are we scared?
Exactly that. And I think, again, $1 million question, but not surprising, because like I said, historically, I think women's bodies, women have themselves been very dehumanized.
yeah.
And if we go back to medical discourses, right, we look at, say, Sigmund Freud, who is the father of psychoanalysis. It basically started from a lot of theorizations there, where he said that women are basically mutilated males. They have a penis envy because they lack a penis, and all of that. And then his basic summation was, women are basically very irrational beings and experience psychosis, and that leads to hysteria. Now, a very interesting thing that you may not know is that the word, our English word hysteria, the root word is actually from Greek, which is hystera, which means uterus.
Oh,
So,
wow.
This is
yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
That is
So,
interesting.
so you see, this, even the idea of, oh, she's just being a hysterical woman, is embedded in a woman's reproductive system.
Oh God,
Ah.
that's so interesting.
Yeah, yeah. And the fact that, the word like lunacy comes from lunar, and the moon, which is lunar, is linked to a woman's menstrual cycle.
I have heard that, actually. I have heard that
Yes.
one,
Yes,
which is,
so we see that this is actually, it is more than just, I think, like, it's embedded in a way which is so deeply rooted in history, in medicine, in language, in the psyche, that there are these stereotypes that are at work. And anytime a woman complains that I am in pain, oh, she's just being hysterical. She's just a
mm,
hysterical woman. And this is a study conducted by a public health researcher in Monash University in Australia, where she has actually examined doctors' discourses on how easily women with endometriosis and their pain gets dismissed because they are just termed as hysterical women.
so that's actually in research papers, actually.
Yes,
Wow.
yes.
How common is it for women to get endometriosis?
Taj, you'd be surprised at the number. Actual recorded diagnosed women around the world, 190 million. And we are not even talking about the global south, where women and girls probably don't have access to, medical resources. So there's a huge number of women that are actually sitting there undiagnosed. So the number is probably higher. So if you want to bring that closer to home, it's 1 in 10 women. Any one woman you point on the street, she will actually have it.
That is a very large number. So okay, so let's go through your journey. So you then decide to go to the doctor because you're in excruciating pain and you don't know what's going on here. What response did the doctor give, firstly, when you did go to him
So
or her?
I
Him or
was
her?
actually
That's me being sexist there, right there. I just said when you went to
no,
him.
Bal, actually, what happened in my case was when I was diagnosed at 19.
Mhm.
I was an undergraduate student in university. I had extreme pain, and I literally fainted in a lecture theater. One of my friends actually had had the presence of mind. She called my mother, and we had those Nokia 8250 phones at that time. She found
Yep.
it. She called my mother and all of that. My mother came. I was immediately rushed. I had a surgery, and they found a cyst on endometrial cyst on my left ovary, which was actually bleeding, and that was the cause of the pain, etc. So they had to remove that cyst,
Was
and
the cyst caused by the lining being on your ovary then?
yes,
Okay.
endometrial cyst, absolutely, Belle. Yeah,
Okay. So
and
how does a cyst form then? Because of the lining. This is me
because of the
being
lining,
really
yes,
me. This
yes.
is me being really dumb.
It basically, again, I'm not a medical doctor, but the mechanism is that, basically when the tissue embeds itself, there, it will basically over time, kind of like become that cyst. That's how the body will work.
Okay.
And that's how it will manifest. So it's been like, I was put on so frontline defense, where a woman is actually diagnosed with endometriosis or a girl is diagnosed with endometriosis. First frontline defense is oral contraceptive pills because
Okay.
they're hormonal, and the mechanism is basically we want to stop the action of estrogen because that is what causes the menses and the bleeding, etc. So we need that to actually be curbed because that will trigger the endometrial deposits and the pain along with it that comes.
So you reduce the estrogen with the hormones.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And again, what happens is some women, the problem with this condition is that there's no cookie cutter solution for how women will actually respond to hormonal treatments, right? Some women take to it well, some women don't take to it well, and when they don't take to it well, it's like you're between a rock and a hard place where you're suffering in pain, you have endometriosis, hormonal treatments are not suiting you because the side effects are so much. What do you do?
What kind of side effects are we talking about? If it's not suiting, what does that mean? It's not suiting you.
So, Bal, it can be anything from extreme nausea, extreme weight gain. So weight fluctuations are very common. So I, for one, have always struggled with my weight ever since I was, kind of diagnosed because it's a seesaw, right? It'll go down, it'll come up, and when you're on hormones, it'll invariably you will start gaining weight at some point. Some people stabilize, for years when they take and the treatment actually suits them. They will have a stable weight and their quality of life is fine, etc. And sometimes other people will have things like hirsutism, so increased body hair or facial hair because your estrogen goes down, right? You have to manage the estrogen levels. And for women and girls, this is again, aesthetically, this becomes one of
A
the
big problem.
issues.
Yeah, of
Yes,
course.
a
Yeah.
problem where you start getting more, facial hair on your cheeks, on your chin, more hair on your chest, and again, like I said, these are such taboo topics. Nobody wants to talk about it, nobody wants to deal with it, nobody wants to say it, and saying it is like, no, 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 we can't talk about it, or you're being negative, yeah.
But one of the other areas, obviously, aside from puberty, and now we understand that endometriosis causes that pain, is there anything between, and the next thing's obviously the effect on pregnancy, because obviously that's a massive part of this as well, but we'll go on to that in a second. So aside from the monthly cycles of periods, is there any other side effects you would say, look, so that our listeners, if they are going through these things, they could perhaps, something might switch and say, actually, I'm going through that as well. Is there any other sign?
And like I said, one of the main ones that we all struggle with that is not talked about is pain,
Okay,
extreme
so it's
pain.
the pain. Okay.
Yeah, and it can be chronic, which means that from the time you actually start ovulating all the way to the time you get your periods to the time post period. So in a month,
It could
you
be the
could,
whole month then.
yes, it could be a
Oh
whole
my
month.
God.
It could be
Oh
a whole
dear.
month. And it's excruciating pain, which requires, pain management. It
Yeah, of
requires,
course.
all the other things. And the thing is that a lot of people, like I said, this gets dismissed. If you tell someone, oh, keep a hot pack or something, okay, then you're in bed for a while.
Yeah.
Exhaustion, right? Extreme fatigue that comes with it.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not just the pain, but along with the hormonal fluctuations that are happening with endometriosis, that leaves you completely exhausted. Tiredness, brain fog. Maybe it might even mimic irritable bowel syndrome, where if you have, say, deposits on your gut that are growing there, that might irritate your gut, and actually you might think it's irritable bowel syndrome, but it's actually part of endometriosis.
Oh.
Yeah. So I had that as well. So sometimes you will have pain on defecating, because there might be deposits that are on, your rectum. Uh, so
So
yeah.
we've done quite a lot of work looking at menopause as well, and one of the things that was flagged up was the fact that a lot of medical professionals don't know the symptoms and the causes and the impacts of menopause. What about endometriosis? Do enough? No, you're shaking your head, which is
And
always
this
depressing when someone shakes their head.
is really scary. So, have you gone out and done your own research then? Because if we can't, we're almost saying we can't 100% rely on medical experts to find out what's happening. So, does that mean we should go away and do our own research then, and then present it to the GP, for example?
Yes, and Taj and Bell, what a lot of times what happens is that, you see, like I said, I gave you the official scientific medical definition, which is the lining of the uterus grows outside of the uterus. Does that in any way, shape, or form capture a lot of the realities that I've told you? Does it capture how painful it is? Does that capture how, how much pain that can happen in a month? Does that capture all the fluctuations that happen? They will list after that, oh, if you have endometriosis, these are the, the signs and symptoms to look for. But the lived reality is very, very different. And this is where I'm going to come in with my kind of experience. I was on a wheelchair for 5 years due to endometriosis.
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
wow. So it affects your body that
That
much.
much. That much.
That's just put it on another arena, it feels like. I wouldn't have thought
Exactly.
it would have affected the body so
So
much.
much. And the pain that, like I said, it defies language. And my flare up, I had a massive flare up in 2013, and I was on a wheelchair until 2018. I was doubled over in pain. I couldn't sit, stand, walk, lie down. And by the time I actually got out of that wheelchair, I had gone through multiple surgeries and nerve blocks, ultimately a total hysterectomy. And my musculoskeletal structure was actually crooked from being doubled over for 5 years and kind of contorting in different ways to curb my pain. And in this situation, like you were asking me, can do doctors actually, I've had to go through 4 to 5 different doctors because your pain is not taken seriously. So one of the doctors, I remember, I was literally crying, and I was begging him, and I said, can I, like, please help me, I'm in a lot of pain. And he kind of, like, he just laughed, and he said, oh, yesterday I went to play tennis, and today my elbow is hurting. And
Oh.
I was like, I couldn't compute that statement in the state that I was
Do you
in.
know what? Sometimes I have to say, sometimes the statements that people in professional situations, you do sit back and think, oh my god, how on earth did you get there? And now I get why at university they have to actually teach how to approach patients, because it's so ridiculous.
It is. It is, and particularly, I think, like I said, when women's, issues are concerned, and there are studies, Bal, actual scientific studies out there now that actually, are saying these things, that women's pain is being dismissed. A woman of color is, who complains of pain, is actually dismissed more easily than a white woman who comes and complains.
Should we
And if a
investigate that? Why is a woman of color's pain more? like dismissed more than a white counterpart?
I think it's just easier, like again, if we go back to historical notions, like if we go back to colonialism and how, women were more kind of like animalized and infantilized, in those discourses, it carries forward from there, right? Women of color are actually more animalized and more easily sexualized, and therefore you are just more hysterical and your pain is more easily dismissed.
Do you know what's really interesting? I mean, I've had this conversation with someone within an organization, and they've said they see a lot of patients, and I was actually surprised because a lot of our topics, we tend to always come to, oh, we don't get the support. We don't tend to complain because we're like, what will the community say, or be quiet, like in this topic as well. And what she actually said, and she wasn't an Asian woman, but she actually said that she finds that a lot of Asian women patients complain more than their white counterparts, and that's that. No, and I have no, she's seeing it on the front line, so I take that, and it was a bit of a surprise to me. So it's very much it's something to really be looked at, isn't it? Because if
It
that's
is.
how we're being seen, yet I feel like the cultural barriers sort of prevent us from doing it. Where are we? What is the actual truth of what's happening out there? Because we
Exactly.
can't dismiss this as, oh
No,
no, it's very strange.
it is, and a lot of us are actually. There's this really excellent book. Everyone needs to pick it up. It's called Unwell Women. I'm going to check the author again in a bit. It was released last year, and that author has done an amazing, amazing job, basically tracking down how women have never been part of medical histories, diagnosis, and how things have been dismissed, etc., etc. Exactly like what you're saying, Val, that this is such an integral part, right? This women complaining of certain things, women of color saying certain things, other women saying other things. But why is it that when we actually look at, say, histories of certain conditions, or a history of how the body was treated in medical discourses, you'll never find a woman there. You'll never find a woman there.
So the book is actually by, is it Eleanor Cleghorn? That's what I've just googled, and so that's the book if anyone is interested
Yes,
in
yes.
reading that. And I'll have a quick look at that as well because I am interested in this subject.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's talk about the next stage. Obviously, aside from puberty, we then have pregnancy. That it doesn't go straight after each other, obviously, but it is a big part of a woman's life. How does endometriosis affect pregnancy, getting pregnant, and then also the labor journey as well?
So, Belle, this is the interesting bit. Endometriosis affects women of reproductive age, and typically, as a girl goes into her 20s and 30s, typically the symptoms will worsen because that is kind of like your prime reproductive, years in a woman's life. And most of the time, endometriosis is talked about exactly from the perspective you're saying, pregnancy, which is infertility. Endometriosis causes infertility, and more than the pain, this aspect is emphasized. That it causes infertility, and these are the approaches that should happen, etc. The pain is usually always, in my experience at least, mentioned as something as a side. Oh yes,
Mm.
it causes a lot of pain. But what a lot of women are actually coming out and actually saying is that our lived reality is that the pain is the one that is affecting us the most. And if you don't deal with the pain, how are we going to even have a good quality of life to do anything else?
Do you know the pain? I mean, I remember at uni, we were talking, there was a section on pain, and the problem with pain is the fact that it's very hard to categorize, isn't it? And that's one of the big problems with not only endometriosis, but a lot of problems, isn't it? Pain just doesn't actually have a one size fits all
Exactly,
system.
Val. Exactly, and I think I can go into the more historical bits of this as well. But one of the things that that has routinely, I think, happened in medical practice is that they'll give you a chart, right? Rate your
How bad's your
pain
pain?
from
Yeah.
1 to 10, and one is a crying face, and 10. Oh, sorry, one is a smiley face, and 10 is like this crying face. What
And you're like, I'm
happens?
on bloody 20 now. Do
20,
something about it.
exactly, exactly, right? And the other thing that is this, like, why is the pain of women dismissed that easily, is
Yeah.
because, again, if we look at philosophy, right, if we go back to Rene Descartes, who was a philosopher who was, famous in saying, I think, therefore I am, right? He's the one who actually made that saying famous. Now, he categorized a mind body split where the mind was rational, logical, objective, and these are traits associated with,
Men, I saw, isn't it?
yes,
So yeah.
yes, and the body is irrational, emotional, passionate, sexual,
Well, someone
associated
tell
with,
them to go and give birth and then come back to us. The usual statement, right?
yes,
But
yes. And again, you see, it goes back to these very, very deeply entrenched thinking systems, stereotypes that are so entrenched that I think they've become unconscious.
and
Nobody
normal.
actually,
Yeah.
questions these things, right?
Okay, so let's go on to the pregnancy section. Does endometriosis mean infertility for 100% of the women that are suffering
No, no,
endometriosis?
no. In fact, the thing with endometriosis is that some women who actually have endometriosis may not experience pain at all either. They could have very bad endometriosis, like their, insides might be kind of like dotted with all these, lesions and deposits, but they may not experience the pain
So
at the
they may
level.
go through life where it's not picked up
Yeah,
and it just
yeah.
isn't known.
Yeah, it isn't known, and maybe the way it becomes known is that, the infertility bit comes in, and they're like, oh, actually, I can't conceive. And when they go to get it checked out, the doctor might say, oh, actually, you have endometriosis, and that's the reason, you're not being able to conceive, or the infertility issue is there. And this is part of the unruliness of women's bodies, right? Like I said, there's no cookie cutter solution. So even when you actually present with this fact that if you go to a doctor, they, no, there's nothing that I can box you in. There's nothing that I can say that, oh, if it works for one woman, it should work for you. But that's the reality. It may not, right? Every woman's body is different, and she's going to respond differently to different treatments. And I think this is where the difficulty a lot of times comes in, where, like, there isn't that one set of smiley faces or sad faces that can categorize this entire experience. It's so different.
So if endometriosis does then affect someone who is trying to get pregnant and they can't get pregnant, is there anything they could have done to sort of mean that that's changed, or like if they had caught it between puberty and when they were trying to get pregnant, would that hormone reduction in estrogen have helped them then become fertile? Is that a
No,
thing?
no,
No.
no.
Okay.
Because, I mean, if the if it's not affecting any other bits of their life, and it's not affecting their quality of life, unlikely they're actually going to say anything, or it's even going to be picked up or anything. If it's not affecting any other bits, right?
Right.
Uh, and this is the thing. Like I said again, I mean, I'm sure medical professionals are going to be more qualified in saying all of this, but unlikely that would be the case, because already it is a hormonal problem.
Right.
So even if the endometriosis was picked early, there would still be hormonal fluctuations that may or may not have impacted, the
But are
pregnancy.
we saying I'm being really mindful because we're questioning you like you are a medical doctor, and we know you've said you're not, so we need to be very mindful of that. So some women can go through and have pregnancies, and it is normal. It's just like you said. I like the saying that you're using. Not it's not fit. The cookie cutter. I'm probably saying it wrong. It isn't the same for everyone. Everyone's got their own journey.
Okay, so for people that do get pregnant, and endometriosis doesn't mean that you're infertile, it could mean it. However, those that do go on and have a successful pregnancy, does it affect their labor or anything further along the
No,
line?
in fact, one of the things that doctors will routinely tell you, which is actually a myth, because, like I said, not everybody responds the same way, is to a lot of women who are going through pain due to endometriosis, they will tell you to get pregnant, because pregnancy hormones will actually suppress a lot of the the estrogen and the levels that actually come, the hormonal fluctuations that happen, and that kind of is supposed to give your body this stasis where the endometrial deposits won't act up. But studies are routinely coming out now that doctors shouldn't be giving this advice, because it's not 100% true. Not every woman, first of all, wants to become pregnant.
Yeah.
Not every woman can. If a woman is in pain like I was, that is absolutely the wrong and insensitive advice to give, you know. And third, most importantly, a lot of women who do get pregnant, who have endometriosis, sometimes still complain of pain even throughout their pregnancy.
So it is a case of you don't know what's going to happen. It is just
Exactly.
each person. So talk to us about your journey, because we've been very academic and we've been very medical about this whole thing, which is great because we've hopefully raised awareness for anyone going through similar symptoms. So you were in a wheelchair for quite a long period. What happened next? You're not in a, are you in a wheelchair at the moment,
No,
or
no, no.
no? So
So
what happened in that time period then?
I was doing my PhD at that time, Val, and it was I had to kind of like take extensions, do all of this. I was in so much pain that it broke me. I don't break easily. My pain, nothing breaks me that easily, but this pain broke me. I was on various drugs. I was on epidural
But can
ketamine.
I just say, I mean, despite that, you still went and got a PhD. I mean,
I was
credit to
going to
that
say,
nonetheless.
yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry, okay, go back to it. Sorry, I
Yeah.
just had to put that in. I was like, you've sort of missed the fact that you've got a PhD.
No,
Sorry, go for it, go for it.
I was like I said, I was on epidural ketamine. I was on fentanyl. I was on morphine. I was on a whole slew of drugs that you can't even imagine. Along with that, like I said, I went through multiple surgeries. I went through almost a total of 6 surgeries and nerve blocks, and ultimately a hysterectomy, a total
But is
hysterectomy.
this the extreme? Would you say this extreme that it could get? Because
It is one of those things, I think, that was quite aggressive.
yeah,
And a lot of doctors were kind of like puzzled. One of them actually even said that, oh, this is not endometriosis at all. We are barking up the wrong tree. And which again makes me question his expertise, because it was clearly endometriosis. That's what it was. It was just a very, very aggressive form that happened, and it kept recurring and recurring and recurring for over, even despite me having multiple surgeries and going on these various hormonal medications and pain medications, just things was simply not working, right?
um,
And what happens in these situations is that hysterectomy is a gold standard, because that is where the root cause of the entire, that's your root organ, right? The uterus. And this is again, like I would say, a very, very contentious issue in our like brown communities,
Yeah.
where if that is like your last resort to getting your life back on track, um, how are you going to deal with it? Because I had to fight my family for it as
I
well.
was just about to say, what did your family say?
No, they were against it completely, and I had to give an ultimatum that I cannot be in this pain for the rest of my life. This pain is affecting me, not you. My entire life was gone, Belle. My career tanked. My life opportunities tanked. I was 28 years old when I ended up on the wheelchair, and I was 34 when I got out of it. And these are the years when people are building their careers, making their life, having seizing all the opportunities that come their way to make everything. And I was in that state, and I couldn't see light at the end of the tunnel. I had to figure out, am I going to be in this state for the rest of my life, or am I going to decide and do something about it? And yeah, so I decided that I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get the hysterectomy. Yeah.
mental health wise, where were you at? Because you've got all this pain going on with your body, then you've got the idea of the Asian part of it. Oh, you have to do this in your life. Where were you mental health wise? Where was
I
your head
was
at?
not in a good place. I was, and that's the other thing, right? In South Asian families, mental health is usually not a
What is that?
yeah, what is that, oh no, we are here, oh, you should pray, or you should do this, you should do that, but actual mental health support, so it was a very, very difficult, trying time. It was a very dark time. I was not in a good place, but I think this is where I would say that my PhD actually kind of came in as a sort of like a lifeline, because it gave me something external to focus on, and all that energy, all that pain, all that misery that I was in, it helped me take my kind of like mind off, and decide that, okay, I have to do this come what may, and I did it, you know and I crossed that bridge, and yeah, so
Me and Belle are just sitting there smiling at you, thinking, "Oh my god,
What I'm gonna
what
do
an
after this is
amazing woman!"
tell. I'm gonna get you to tell everyone like where you were last week. To be fair, and then we'll talk about that in a bit. But in regards as to the reason I've said that is because she's a very important lady, and the PhD served her well, and she's in very high places, regardless of the fact that she was going through so much pain. Um,
Do you think?
okay, so
Sorry, do you think the pain drove you to work harder then?
I no, I don't know, Taj, how to actually put this, because I think I would say the pain broke me. I had no vision of what my future was going to be in that. In fact, I lost everything. I lost my career. Like I said, I lost a lot of things. The only thing I had was very, very short term survival goals, that I have to survive the next second without pain or with the pain. I have to survive the next day in that pain, and the following day, and the following day. And that is where the PhD basically fit in. It just helped me survive second by second and day by day, to give me that sort of sanity and lifeline I think that I needed. And along this was, the decision making process that I needed to do, that okay, how long am I going to be in this, state for? I cannot be, yes, everyone is against the hysterectomy, but this is me. I have to think about, this is my life, my body, my pain. Nobody else is going through that pain, right? I am. Everyone is just observing me, and they can express their worry and concern out of that observation, but they are not the ones who are going through it. It is me, so it all the decisions, etc., that came after actually came from that place. Yeah.
in regards to the hysterectomy, you were in a wheelchair. Was it the hysterectomy that meant that you could then obviously be mobile? Then is that how it worked?
Yes, for my case, yes. But again, Belle, I have to say that in a lot of cases, sometimes even hysterectomy doesn't work, because, like I said, the deposits are in other places in your body as well. And that is why pain management becomes so important. Right, so there was a case that, while I was going through this, one of my surgeons was actually cautioning me against the hysterectomy, and saying that they had a woman who actually had the hysterectomy and yet had to keep coming back for other surgeries, because her pain just wasn't going away even after she had had the hysterectomy. And that is a reality as well, right? Which means that in a case where there is no known cure, and even a hysterectomy can't give you 100% pain-free life, then the pain intervention becomes so important.
Yeah.
And this is why I've been kind of saying that, where in a case like endometriosis, where all the other, it's talked about it, from the point of view of infertility or this or that, but nobody talks about the pain, and how do you manage a pain, and how do you ensure that a woman or a girl actually has a good quality of life despite suffering from all of these things.
And I think you've just hit on something very important. How do you have a good quality of life? And that's what it has to come down to.
Yes,
Can I
yes.
ask where you are with your family? Because obviously you did have the hysterectomy. They didn't agree, but did they come round to it?
They did, because I gave an ultimatum.
Fair enough.
I said, it's either this or that, and take it or leave it. But I recognize that not every girl and not every woman has the the capacity and capability to actually do that and go against family norms and family traditions, which is why shedding light on these issues, the way it affects a woman and her life, is so important in our communities. So important. It's not just a period issue. It's not just, oh, get over it, you're complaining. No. Girls, women, daughters, mothers who are actually going through this, they need proper resources, they need proper support, and they need the kind of medical professionals to come in and take them seriously when they say that we are in this much of pain, please help us. Yeah.
And I always ask, what's your last thought? But I think you've just covered it there, Gurpreet. I think that's a fantastic thing. Is there anything, I will ask the question nonetheless, is there anything else that you can advise someone that might be thinking, perhaps after listening to this podcast, I might be suffering from endometriosis? What would you advise them to do?
Advocate for themselves, because in a typical scenario, you are going to get dismissed from your pain. Doctors are probably going to say that, no, no, wait and see, watch whatever happens. Oh no, we are not going to do this, not going to do that. No, that is not a symptom. No this, no that. Advocate for yourself. Look, there are online communities of survivors and sufferers who have actually put resources together. We have actually come together to do all of these things because we know that this is going to happen. And it may mean changing doctors. Most of us do, because the first doctor we go to will dismiss it, second doctor will say this is that, and on average you will change 4 to 5 doctors, and it's usually the fifth doctor or the sixth doctor who will actually work with you and say, yes, I hear you, I hear what you're going through. And that's 50% of the battle won. And this is also what happened in my case. By the time I reached my fourth, fifth gynecologist, she was like, yes, we have a problem here. We need to, resolve it. We have to probably experiment with certain hormones, certain medications, but we're going to do what it takes to get you back on your feet.
Where can we find these resources that you mentioned that have been put
So
together?
in the UK, actually, it's really good. We have the Endometriosis Foundation, which does quite a bit of this. There's an International Endometriosis Foundation, which has a collection of, doctors who actually work in these areas, physiotherapists who actually, that's a big component as well, which a lot of, doctors may not give you the option, but there are pelvic physiotherapists, particularly who work with women who have gone through endometriosis and related surgeries, and how pelvic strengthening or pelvic muscle releasing can actually help you in the pain management. All of these things, they're actually online. And if you actually just Google, endometriosis blogs or endometriosis, etc., you will come across a wealth of information that is there. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Gurpreet, for telling us your own personal journey with
Thank you.
what sounds like an awful problem. Not a problem. I don't. Would you call it a disease? I don't. Is that the right language for it?
I think it's an issue.
Issue. Okay.
Yeah, it's a disease, it's an issue, but it's more of an issue because it, while being a disease, right, it's all these surrounding issues that are actually not being tackled and talked about in tackling the disease. Right, there is this idea of, oh, she's the pain is not being taken seriously, this is not taken seriously, we need the hysterectomy, that is not being talked about. There are these options that are there, that the hormones, etc. So it's a whole, I think it's a whole body approach that we need.
Yeah.
Yes.
And this
Yeah.
is why I've said it, although I was about to do my closing speech, it's just the fact that language, as we've discussed, is so important when it does come to issues like endometriosis. But thank you for sharing your personal journey and also teaching us other things. So I was like, wow, I did not know that, even though I probably should have. So it's been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much, Gurpreet.
Thank you, Bal, and thank you, Taj, for this opportunity and for having me here. Thank you.
Thank you. That's goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.
Follow us on Instagram and Facebook, changing_suits, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.